Is it possible for an object to be haunted? Is it possible for a doll to be possessed? And if so, is it possible for that doll to kill you? There's a lot of different questions when it comes down to things in the paranormal field. And there's a lot of information that's said, and you need to question whether it's real or if it's fabricated. You need to question the morals and the reasons behind it. Is it for financial gain? Is it just misinformation? And the list goes on and on. So I think we need to talk about haunted objects, or so-called haunted objects, the stories behind these objects, what's real, what's the real story behind these objects, if there's any truth to it, and let you all draw your own conclusion. Because I think it comes down to that, is somebody might have incorrect information and they might be fueling that or feeding that information to the public. Not intentionally. Some people might make false information and intentionally feed that to the public. So for their own reasons. So I think it comes down to, let's give you all the information on some of the so-called most haunted objects out there and let you draw your own conclusion. If there's any truth behind this legend, and go from there. Kenny Biddle from the Skeptical Enquirer. Kenny and I have been friends for about 20 years now, and we see very differently on a lot of topics, but we also see exactly the same on others. So I want to bring Kenny in, and I want Kenny to tell us about the real information behind some of these objects. Is Annabelle really a possessed doll that you need to be worried about? Is there such a thing as the devil's chair? Is there such a thing as possibly being able to hold a demon inside a wooden box? Is there a guitar that's possessed or holds a demonic entity? Tonight, we're going to give you the information that we know, the information that's being said by others, and let you all draw your own conclusion. Is it true or is it bull? So let me bring in my good friend Kenny Biddle from the Skeptical Enquirer.
Hey.
Thanks for joining me, man.
You're welcome. Anytime, bud.
Now, Kenny, you and I have been friends for a long time, and a lot of people don't realize that, oh my God, a paranormal investigator and a skeptic can be friends. But it's not that you don't believe in the paranormal, correct?
I do not maintain a belief in the paranormal. And there's so many angles here, because like the paranormal, what does that mean? You know, like that's a broad blanket term. It's pretty much like anything that is thought to be beyond the scope of science. I mean, that's when you define paranormal. It doesn't actually mean ghost or spirit. It just means like this wide range of topics. And for a belief, for me, like beliefs are very hard. I grew up Catholic, so I did have beliefs when I started, but beliefs are not based on facts. They are belief. They're based on beliefs. They're based on what your parents and your family have told you, or what other people have told you, and what you want to be true, what you would like to be true. So yeah, I don't maintain a belief. And the reason for that is that I haven't seen sufficient scientifically valid, objective evidence to prove to me or to show that spirits exist, ghosts exist, there's an afterlife, and this and that. There's a lot of circumstantial and very subjective, and I hesitate to call it evidence, stuff that's brought out and presented, but it's a lot of stuff by, and I'm not trying to be mean, but amateurs that really don't know what they're doing.
Well, I think when it comes down to paranormal investigation, isn't everybody pretty much an amateur? Because think about it. I mean, you're doing something. There's really no level of, there's no level in it when it comes down to it. I mean, people can call themselves, oh, I'm a professional paranormal investigator or an expert paranormal investigator. What the hell does that even mean? I've been investigating for, geez, you've known me for like almost 20 years. I've been investigating for 30 years, 30 plus years. By far, I'm not an expert paranormal investigator. I'm a guy trying to figure out what's going on. And
Right.
it's tough when you see these people out there who call themselves experts in this field that scientifically they can't even prove exist.
Yeah, there's problems with this, with the titles, because one they're self-styled.
Mhm.
They're not. Nobody is given the title of paranormal investigator. That is something we give ourselves.
Exactly.
Except I can actually edge out a little bit here and say that I was hired for an investigator job. So I am an investigator. That is my job title.
You investigate claims of
I
the
investigate
paranormal.
claims, yes. And the difference, when one calls themselves a paranormal investigator, they are kind of like shoehorning themselves into one niche, like one little area, paranormal. And again, we already covered that's a blanket term, so it could be anything strange. And this is a title people give themselves. There's no requirement. There's no testing. There's no, you don't have to get a certificate or an education, college education, or a degree or anything like that. You can simply wake up one morning and go, you know what? I like that TV show I saw last night.
Right.
I am now a paranormal investigator.
Well, but isn't that also the same problem with demonologists or demonology? It's the study of demons.
Yes.
And you get these people out there who read a book and then all of a sudden they go around telling everybody they're a demonologist. Now, there are people who've been studying demonology for the majority of their lives, 20, 30, 40 years. But these people who do it for a month or two or a year, and then all of a sudden either start showing up on shows or start posting stuff all over online about being a demonologist. I mean,
Right.
you run into that same problem with that.
Yes, because that's not unless you're associated with like the Catholic Church, something like that, where they offer classes and it's the history. They teach you about the history of this, and it's funny when you do get into history. Demonology was actually the study of powers that witches would get from demons. That was your demonology. It wasn't the study of actual demons. It was the study of these powers that you would get from certain demons by witches that would worship or summon them and make a deal and whatnot. So there was a lot of that. But you're right. It's the same kind of premise. People can just wake up and go, you know what? Ghost hunter doesn't sound, professional enough. It sounds like a hobby. Paranormal investigator. Everybody does that. Let me do something more sexy and say, I'm a demonologist. And that, for the most part, what I've observed, most people that call themselves that are simply ones that claim everything's a demon. Like they want to go with that. Like it's not a ghost, it's a demon because, it scratched you. Therefore, demon. Therefore, I'm studying this case. And that's another point that I want to touch on too, that you brought up. Like people that claim that they study demonology or study the paranormal. And like, what does that mean? Does that mean you read a couple books, you watch some YouTube shows, you watch network TV reality shows, on the subject, and now
You
you're
can't base anything on. First off, you can't base an investigation on a reality television show. Let's be honest.
right.
We're like when we go and we investigate a place. We might be there a week or 2 weeks, but it's broken down into a 40-minute show.
Yeah.
So there's literally 10 to 12 hours of footage every day that we have that isn't used because and from multiple cameras, and
Right.
it's broken down to 40 something minutes because of commercial time. So, I mean, even trying to learn from a television show, a reality show is
Right.
impossible. I mean, you can't.
You can't. And there's so many other problems. I mean, I'm definitely a science based guy. Like I look for the science. I look for accountability. I want to know like how does this work? And what are the results? How do we interpret the results? Who decides how to interpret? What's the interpretation? Is it biased or not? Like who's doing it? Are they doing it in favor of a haunting? Because like if that's the premise of the show or the YouTube video or whatever, when they're telling you in the beginning, we're going into this haunted house and we're going to get so much evidence. Like that is such a biased attitude. And
Really.
you're going to get shit because they want to.
And I think that opens up the whole door on haunted objects. I mean, we've seen everything right down to that whole Annabelle doll. And I want to, first off, where's your belief on when it comes down to like a residual type haunt, whether you believe in a residual type haunt or not? Do you believe that energy from a traumatic experience can be trapped in an object or can be absorbed by an object?
No. So this is a good question to get into, because especially the word energy. The word energy is like a thorn in my side. It really is when it comes to the paranormal community, because it is a buzzword that is used out of context. It is used as a placeholder. When there is no positive or negative energy. That's not a thing in science. There's just different types of energy. Yeah. Energy is defined as the ability to do work. That's
the positive and negative is more people's perception of the energy or their claim of that energy.
This is a perception. This is a human trait. Like we have a lot of tendency to put human traits onto inanimate objects. You know, we look at dolls and say, "Oh, it looks sad." You know, and we can mess around with puppets and we put that emotion onto things. We also, when it comes to like alleged haunted objects, no matter what they are, when it comes to like emotional triggers, we've been primed. We have been primed from horror movies and stories to think dolls can be haunted, that an object can be haunted by something from a traumatic event. If someone dies and it's in the room with them, you know, somehow their quote unquote energy is released and it goes into this object. And now wherever like if they were wearing a pendant, you know, and a woman is murdered or commits suicide while wearing it. So bad things happen to anyone that owns this pendant. Like these are conditioned responses that we have gotten from horror stories over the years, from movies over the years. And we've had a conversation about haunted dolls.
Absolutely.
And the ridiculousness? Yeah, I'm saying that right. Ridiculousness of a haunted doll. If you take a rag doll, because Annabelle is the perfect example. It is a rag doll. You know why they call it that? Because it's filled with rags.
Well, and and you and I were actually joking about this not too long ago, where I can't understand where a doll is going to attack me, hurt me. What? I mean, first off, if it's a stuffed doll, I'll just throw it to the damn dog. I mean, that's fine. It's a stuffed doll. It is not like it's going to overpower me. And then people say, well, it's not that it's going to overpower you, that it's going to curse you. Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, based on what?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, like a lot of it might be based on, I don't know, things that are made up for financial gain, for
stories,
sales, or movies,
ticket sales to a not haunted museum.
So,
you know,
well, yeah. So, I mean, the haunted doll theory is, you know, I don't like dolls just because I'm not scared of them by any means, but I hate feeling like friggin' eyes are always on me. That when you walk in a room and you know things are just looking. So it's just I'm not a big fan of that, but I'm not scared of a doll.
Yeah, there is nothing to be scared of. I mean, the fear comes from, again, us. We either have these triggers from movies. Again, we're conditioned from movies and stories and TV shows growing up, seeing horror films where dolls do come to life, you know, and we blend that fantasy and reality. I mean, think about like you and anyone that's watching this, think about after you've watched a horror movie, like a really good one, which you don't find many anymore, but you watch a really good horror movie, especially at night, then every little sound now makes you jump. You're like,
the heat turning on, anything like that.
Stupid shit, you know, and you get jumpy. So we're conditioned for that. And then we can also get primed by anyone telling us stories. If you walk into a place where you think it's haunted, where you've heard stories that it's haunted, you already have that priming. Now, imagine someone comes over to you and says, hey, would you like to see this cursed object we have? And it's in a display case. And they show you it behind glass. And they're like, it's behind glass to protect it. We have these holy symbols around it to keep it in there. But this has done weird things. It's attacked people. Now you're primed to think oh shit, he like, is that thing real?
Yeah.
You know, is it haunted? Is it going to get up and move? There's no evidence to that. And I mean, when we step back and we look in a general kind of wide angle view of all these alleged haunted dolls, none of them have done anything that is, I mean, it falls into three categories. One, they haven't done anything that they wouldn't normally do under normal conditions, you know, from vibration from traffic or people walking around or just falling down over time, you know, because that thing called gravity. You have things that are manipulated on purpose by people. They're set up with fishing line, or someone's got a hand through a table or behind a table or behind a couch, manipulating that. Something's done to manipulate it purposely for the reaction that we get. And then we have the third category, which are ones that we can't test. You know, like some dolls we can test. We can go there and, you know, poke it and prod it and see what's behind it and figure out like, oh, this is probably how they did it. But the ones that really showcase, hey, you know, this did something really creepy. No one can explain it. And the reason no one can explain it is because the owner won't let anyone near it.
Yeah, and a lot of times they cover that with, well, we're not going to let anybody near it for their own safety, for that thing, because I don't want to be sued if this person has some sort of an experience. And so, all right, so when it comes down to that, we got the most famous known dolls out there, I guess, which are Annabelle, Robert the Doll, and so forth.
Right.
What's the true history that you know about the doll known as Annabelle? I mean, I know it's nothing like the one that you've seen in the movies.
Right.
This porcelain creepy thing, but it's just a Raggedy Ann doll.
It is. It's just a Raggedy Ann doll. So the history comes from the people that popularized it in the first place, Ed and Lorraine Warren. So this is their book. And they talk about Annabelle in here. And I want to preface this by the first chapter that you read. And when the author starts going into like all the amazing things that the Warrens did, the first thing they talk about is that there's a naval academy that had a ghost, and Ed was called in to figure it out, and it was in all the newspapers, and they give like the date, the year, and I actually found the newspaper articles about the incident. But surprisingly, Ed Warren's not in there at all. It was actually a hoax. When you look up the actual papers on newspapers.com, is at West Point that you can see there, it was a hoax. It was one side was hoaxing the other side and just having fun with it. So that kind of gives me the idea that this book is not going to be so truthful. But if we look at the chapter on Annabelle, and I'm getting it here. So I'll show you the beginning chapter so you can see that what we're talking about here. So there's Annabelle, chapter 3. And if we go to page 60, we read that, and this is Ed's voice here. No, the doll is not possessed. Spirits don't possess things. Spirits possess people. Instead, the spirit simply moved the doll around and gave it the illusion of being alive. So when you read that, you're like, well, then why is it sitting in a case in someone's museum with all this alleged protection around it? Why? Why can't people touch it? Why does it have to be in a case? Why does it have to be guarded? It's not possessed. But when it comes...
How does the spirit move it around? It doesn't have any ligaments. It doesn't have any bone. I mean, it doesn't have anything inside. Just stuffing.
It doesn't. It doesn't have a skeletal system. It doesn't have muscular ligaments.
It's like, come on. It's like...
There's nothing there. You basically would have to imagine, and again, I'm going to stress imagine, that if a ghost was real or a demon was real, they would have to move it around like a puppet. Like we would. You pretty much have to hold it and kick its legs and do all this stuff. There's no point. There's really no point.
But I mean, if they could do that, then why waste their time doing it with a doll and just do it? I mean,
just do it. Just do it. I mean, that's all that's doing is it's drama. It's a drama queen. Like, you're telling me that demons are drama queens because they want the attention like that. And to what end?
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, if I believe in negative type entities. I believe in, I mean, just like there's good and bad people. I mean, so but I believe in things that are inhuman, that have never walked the earth. And you and I might differ on things, but we've always respected each other because we're always willing to listen to either side. Um, but let's be honest, when it comes down to if there are demons, um, these things that have walked the earth for thousands of years before man, I mean, wouldn't we just be like a gnat to them? Just a little something just bother. I mean, first off, we're not going to cause them any harm. They've been around a long time before us. They have this supposedly all these super abilities.
Right.
Why waste their time with us?
Yeah, like big super abilities, escaping from the depths of hell to move a doll. Like, great. Or move a chair. Let's move a chair.
Sounds like it's all downhill from where they started, right?
It really is bad. It really, I mean, when it comes to production value, like, they really don't deliver. They don't. But for the origin of that story, for Annabelle, it's basically like I think there were 2 or 3 girls living together in an apartment, and 1 or 2 of them was a nurse, allegedly, and they had this doll, and it apparently moved around a lot after they were playing with a Ouija board, and it's just they called Ed and Lorraine, and they came in, and Ed took the doll and had this whole story. But there's no documentation to back this up. Like, this story is just basically made up, and just presented as a story in a book. And I don't think they realized that it was going to take off, because it went from the doll is not possessed, which is the passage that I read you, to the doll is possessed and we have to keep it in this cage. Like, it evolved. And unfortunately, that's pretty much what Ed did. I mean, I didn't know him personally, but tracking his stories, they always change. They went from ghosts to everything's a demon. And it's never the same from the book to what he tells in afterwards in interviews. The story always changes. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, especially Annabelle, there's no documentation, there's no evidence to support this story ever happened. And again, like, I'm willing, I'll pick it up, open the door, because I won't break it, but open the door. Let me pick it up. I guarantee nothing's going to happen to me.
I mean, and that's the thing. You've always been willing to honestly go and investigate and deal with these things. But bottom line, your thoughts on the Warrens in general. What's your thoughts on them?
So my thoughts are, and again, like, I know both of them have passed away.
Yeah.
I met Lorraine once. Actually, I met Lorraine at a conference that you were at. That we met again. I think it was the second time we met.
Oh, at Penn State.
Penn State, yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
That was oh my God.
That's going back.
Going back even before the show, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how long we've known each other. Back when you were actually young.
Hey, right back at you. But my opinion of them is that they exploited people. I think they exploited people because they came in. Again, everything was a demon. When they walked in, they pretty much took over. They convinced the family that they had demons and, hey, we're going to take care of this. And you would come up with a book. There's plenty of books. I have this book. I have In a Dark Place over there. I have different books from them because every case would equal a book where the Warrens made a lot of money and the family did not. They made a little bit, but nowhere near what the Warrens would make off of the books. And there was never any proof. Like, there was never any evidence to support what they were saying. But no, I don't think they were legitimate people. I think they really took advantage of families. And I think it's sad. And there's so many reports. I mean, you from the families coming out afterwards and saying that's not how it was. Especially when, like, we talk about the devil in Connecticut or the devil on trial, like that trial case where the I think 11 or 12-year-old boy at the time allegedly was possessed, and then it jumped into the other guy who murdered his landlord. The older brother of the kid that was allegedly possessed, he came out and just admit it. Like, no, this wasn't. That's not the way it happened. We have court cases. If you look at Biddle, what's his name? Gerald Biddle. He sued the Warrens. He authored this book and another book. He sued the Warrens because they didn't have a real story. And well, there was a lot of over like copyright and, you know, having the rights, because Biddle actually owned the rights of all the Warrens stories, and Warner Brothers went and did it. It's a whole mess. I won't get into that detail. But we have him and like another author of, wait a minute, Ray Garton, who's the author of In a Dark Place. And this is about the Connecticut family, the Snedekers, comes out and tells you right off the bat, he says, like, there was no real story here, that the family couldn't keep their stories together. He went to Ed and said, look, you know, they're telling me all different things. There's obvious problems with alcohol and drugs in this family. What am I supposed to do? And Ed's response to him was, well, they're crazy. They're all crazy. Everyone that comes to us is crazy. Just make it up. That's what you do. You write horror stories. Just, you know, use what you have and then make up the rest. And that's in the 500 plus page court documents. And that you can find online, and I can send you the link to that too if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, I think the Warrens, of course, it's mixed feelings. As a paranormal investigator, I think the Warrens opened up a lot of doors for the paranormal. No matter what, whether you like or dislike the Warrens, I think you need to give some sort of kudos to what they accomplished or what they brought forward or what they opened up. You know, they were always getting themselves on camera and talking about the paranormal, I think helped open up the door in positive and negative, because it brought good into the field, but it also brought some bad people into the field.
I'm going to go a different route and just say, I cannot give a pass to people that deliberately exploit others, and they're making profit off of other people.
Yeah.
And yeah, they do bring attention to it, but there's other ways to do that. They could have done it much better, much more professionally, and properly, you know, bring in actual experts, not claim to be, you know, a demonologist, or I can do exorcisms. You know, I don't need the church. I can do them myself. That's not the way to do it. And I think morally and ethically, they did it completely wrong. So that's one of the things I'll stick to my guns. I will never give them credit for anything, because I think they were just horrible people. And that's it. I mean, that's all I can say.
And like I said, you know, you and I have always been able to talk and listen to each other's side and not make it an attack on one another.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. All right. So let's get into some other stuff here.
Okay.
So there is now a famously haunted museum, or
really?
So-called. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, Kenny, you've snuck in there many times. Under your name, fake names, in costume. I mean, you've gotten in there a few times. How many times have you been there? I've
been in there twice, twice, because it's expensive.
But aren't you also on the band wall though?
Yes. Yeah, that was after the first time. Yeah.
But you still got into the second time. So how the hell did you pull that one off?
So the second time was actually easy. I mean, the first time I went in, I went in and everything was fine. I went in with a couple of the other skeptics. So my wife came with me, and then we had Susan Gerbic and Mark Edward. Mark Edward is a mentalist. He was really good, popular. He still is a mentalist magician. And Susan does a lot of work exposing psychics through Psychic Stings. But we went through, and I was just so unimpressed. It was like $50 to get in, which is just a lot of money to be rushed through this museum that is dark, like really dark. And something I noticed is that I couldn't see any exit signs, and that's a problem. That is definitely a problem. I could not see any exit signs whatsoever. So I don't know if they just weren't there or covered up or whatever, but I didn't see any. It's dark. It's hot as hell. Like there was only one room, I think, that had any kind of air conditioning. The rest was hot, which explains a lot of, it explains why a lot of people pass out
In Vegas.
while in there. Yes,
Talking about
you're in Vegas. It's already hot.
Yeah.
Like we were walking through, we had a group, the second time we had a group of skeptics, and all of us, I mean, everyone's sweating. And it's like, Jesus, this sucks.
Do you think that's more to like rush people out?
I think it's one, so you don't have to air condition your building. You don't have to pay for it.
Well,
but two,
it makes it cheaper. Yeah.
It's ambiance. You know, it really, I'm going to go out on a limb here and just speculate. I want to make sure I say that, speculate that it's part of the whole ambiance, because if it's hot, there is a good chance you might faint, you know, and if you do faint, guess what? You're going to end up on TMZ.
Yeah. Well, I mean, aren't you waiting? A lot of people, you're waiting outside for a good period of time first before you even get in there. Right. So,
yeah.
I mean, in Vegas, again, it could be up 100+ degrees.
Right. So yeah, the first time we went in, we went through, listened to stories. You're not allowed to record. No audio recording, no video recording, no pictures. Once you're in the main tour, like there's only a lobby where you're allowed to take pictures, which is telling. You know, that tells me like, all right, you're hiding stuff, or you don't want information to get out. You're also not. You have to sign a release form, which is a 2-page release form, which is just so ridiculous. Like, you know, there's a lot about spirits in here, and you might get possessed or scratched or this and that. I'm like, all
pretty
right.
much setting you up from the get-go with, you know, making
you are primed.
Kind of paranoid.
You are primed before you go in there. And then once you get in there, it wasn't like I expected. A lot of haunted items, like a lot of items that were alleged to be haunted or cursed. But I would say it was a very small percentage of the stuff that was in there. Some of it was claimed to be, I think, like Wyatt Earp's Bible. And there's some, like, I started to look into that, and allegedly the actual Wyatt Earp's Bible is in a museum somewhere, not here in Zak's place. So given his track record, I wouldn't put him above like embellishing the truth. But there's a lot of junk. It's almost like a oddities version of a Goodwill store. You just go in and there's just stuff piled everywhere. There's like a room which is filled with dolls, which are just standing up, which, I mean, you could make any of them fall over. There's just a lot of junk and a lot of wasted stuff. And you're rushed through. It is a guided tour, and you got, I think we got like 4 or 5 different guides going through it, but they were kind of rushing. And the first time I went through, I like to read everything. So if there's plaques on the wall, descriptions, whatever, I want to read it. And I was constantly like, the guide would look at me like, let's go, come on. And I was like, dude, I paid $50. I'm reading this shit. You know, I'm not moving until I'm done. But yeah, a couple times I didn't like being rushed. And then there was like a circus diorama you walk through, which has nothing to do with like haunted objects. It was just a circus diorama. There's a whole hallway of clowns, like mannequins and stuff. And I guess that's spooky and weird, but there's a freak show.
Clowns in general are
clowns in general.
You got to paint a smile on your face.
Fair.
You have an issue.
Fair.
So.
There's a freak show in it, like a circus freak show. You literally stop at a section and there's a guy doing like, he puts a drill. He's got a drill with a whole drill bit that's like a foot long, and he puts it up his nose and he does like little tricks. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I didn't want this. I want to. No. And then the last time I was in there and I was bored, so I took out my phone to look at Facebook, and I got yelled at. No phones allowed. Ugh.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of these objects that that are supposedly haunted that are in this property, and in Zak's, haunted museum. I've never been there, so but I want to talk about. So there's been a lot of things online about a satanic 6-string guitar. You're already laughing. So
yeah, that is something. I believe it was like 2018 where he purchased it. The news items started coming out back then because there was a story about this satanic guitar, and it was a young boy that was listening to all this devil music, and he was playing it, and he got electrocuted because it was a storm, and he had weird music on, and yeah, somehow he got electrocuted. I don't know how, because it's acoustic guitar. It's not an electric guitar. It wasn't plugged in.
It's not even plugged in.
No, not plugged in, but he still got electrocuted. He was found on his bed.
Energy. It's that energy we were talking about.
Yeah, there's that imaginary energy. But there was a lot. The story is actually fascinating to read the story, because it is definitely made up. It is using every cliche, and it really does sound like something Vincent Price would be talking about. Like, I can hear his voice when I'm reading the story, the background story.
Let me ask this. You said it's definitely made up. Do you have proof that it's made up? So
I did reach out to the guy that was the seller. And he, we had a conversation. We went back and forth. What's his name? I did have it in my notes here. I do have, Mary Baker. Mary Baker. That's his name. Eddie Mary Baker. He is a professional musician. I can't talk. I'm too sober. He's a professional musician, and he's the one to put it up there. It was actually up for sale for a couple of years, and nobody wanted it because it's actually a piece of shit. I mean, it's beat up, it's old, it's not great condition whatsoever. And then somebody did a story on it. Some music magazine did a story on it, and then it gained traction.
And he was claiming at that point that it was the Satanic Six string.
Yes,
at that point.
Yeah,
as far back.
And I think it gained traction because of that story. So I did reach out to him after Zak had already purchased it and said, "Hey, like you talk about this story about this boy dying while playing it. Do you have any information on this boy?" And at first he wrote back and he's like, I can't really tell you about the boy. And he started telling me about the guitar and the story and, his creative background and all these little winks, like, I'm creative, wink, wink, just to keep that in mind. So I kept pushing him, and he did say that he loves Skeptical Enquirer, the magazine I write for. So when I finally pushed, my final push, because he wasn't telling me like anything about the kid or if there's any background, I finally pushed and said, look, Zak is going to put this up there. He's going to be publishing this information, pushing this information, this history about this boy dying and this and that. He's going to exploit it. And if it's not true, if it's misinformation, he's going to be putting it out there. And I want to try to put a stop to this. So finally, he did write me back, and I'm going to read you what he did, because I asked about the background, the provenance, any paperwork, because Zak had said that he has the paperwork to back up all this story, the whole story. So when he wrote back to me, Mary Baker says, as for the substantial provenance Zak claims to have, let me be clear by giving you several points. One, I never offered any proof about the validity of the story. Two, he never requested any proof. He never asked for any proof. And then three, if he had asked for proof, I would not have been able to offer a single shred of evidence pertaining to the alleged haunting nature of the guitar for reasons I'm sure are obvious. So for me, that was enough. I mean, the story, he didn't want to just say outright. I think he was worried that Zak was going to come back after him financially.
Come out and say, I made up these stories,
but he gave me the information I know. Like, he has nothing to prove any of that story. And Zak never asked for it, which that's telling, because now it's like, as an investigator, if you claim to be an investigator and you get this story, you want proof. Like, give me the background, give me the documents. Who was it? But he never asked for it. And even if he did, the seller was like, I don't have anything. I don't have anything. And he's telling me like, all right, that tells me he made it up. And I mean, more conversation later, it became more solid that he made up the story.
And he stuck with it.
He stuck with it. And it was actually funny because I wrote an article about it. I put all this out, and the I know that Zak called the seller and asked him, like, did you say this to him, to me? And the guy's like, yeah, I did. You know, like he asked, I'm not going to lie to him. And so the display never made it to the museum. It didn't, like we were expecting the second time I was at the museum to see this display. And we asked about it during the tour. And we were told that, oh, that has been taken down for like repairs, or they want to redo it and stuff. But I don't think it was ever up because I never heard about it going up until recent.
Wasn't there a television show that talked about it?
Was there?
I
don't know.
I thought that there was something on television. I could be wrong though, but who knows?
There are so many. I know that he has another series like that showcases different items that he brings into the museum, but honestly, I try not to watch it unless I have to.
Yeah, I don't watch it either.
Yeah.
All right. So I think the next thing I want to talk to you about is something I've always had a kind of a big problem with, is this Dybbux box. All right. Now, as a guy who's been investigating for 30 plus years, and we get sent in to write up preliminary reports on so-called possessions and demonic hauntings, which 99.9% of those have nothing to do with the paranormal. I have a hard time believing that a box contains a demon or is considered the most haunted object in the world. It's supposedly responsible for multiple deaths, a stroke. I mean, the list goes on and on. Cursing, the cursing friggin' Post Malone. I mean,
that was just silly.
So what do you know? What do you actually know about this box?
So I know that the box was purchased at an estate sale. It was not complete. It's missing pieces.
Was it said to be haunted at that point?
So here's the thing. The only account that we have from the purchase is from the guy that originally sold it, Kevin Mannis. And his story was always that he got it at an estate sale. He was told that it was a Dybbuk, and it had a Dybbuk in it, and he paid it no mind. So he took it home, he cleaned it, and then all this weird stuff started happening to him, his employee, his mother, and then anyone that got it or he gave it to or sold it to would bring it back. Lots of things happened, and then he eventually put it on eBay in 2003, I believe, and sold it for $140. And then it went to a college student who then sold it to a professor, Jason Haxton, for $280. And Haxton is the one that wrote the book called The Dybbuk Box, which was used to base a movie, The Possession, off of. And the story just grew. So what I know about that is digging into it. One, a Dybbuk is part of Jewish folklore. A Dybbuk is pretty much, it's a person that dies and they are afraid of judgment because they done screwed up. So they're afraid of judgment. So their soul cleaves on to another soul, another living soul. So now you have two souls in one body. And in order to get that out, it must be exorcised by the Council of Elders. And they have to do it. And that's it. There is nothing about a Dybbuk box in folklore. This is something that was unique and made up on the spot by Kevin Mannis when he did his eBay auction. He is a storyteller. That's his profession. He's a storyteller. He writes poems. He does recordings. He does a lot of things. He's an artist. That's what he does. So the box actually, I mean, after the story, the initial story, and then Jason Haxton got it and wrote a book about it. It's funny to me because when I read the book, he claims to have interviewed like the old lady that originally owned it, that created the Dybbuk box, who doesn't exist. Like she does not exist. That's the weird thing. And then it comes out by both Kevin and Jason. They I guess talk, and there's a new addition to the story saying that the original box was destroyed. So the original box that had a Dybbuk in it, and this is really where it goes off the rails. So the woman that summoned the demon that is in the Dybbuk, she did it due to the war because she wanted to attack the Nazis. So like it plays into this really big, almost like Marvel What If, like a TV series kind of thing, storyline. But the original box was lost and destroyed. So the one that you see in the pictures that's in Zak's museum, that's not even the original. So it's a replica, or it's just another box. Again, according to the story.
Yeah.
And this is just a narrative. This is a story that was made up. And I keep saying it's made up because I did have Kevin Manis on my show, and we talked. I reached out to him. I said, I've researched this. I've written an article. I did a whole video on this. I talked to a rabbi that teaches at college, like that deals with the mythology of it. We talked all of this. I said, I'd like you to come on the show and talk. And asked him point blank, did you make up the story? And he said, yes. He made it up. I think the way he phrased it was that he made it up just like Orson Welles made up War of the Worlds. And like my response kind of sarcastically was, well, yeah, he did make it up. That was completely made up. So yeah, I mean, it's a story that he made up to sell the box. That's it. It's a completely made up, fabricated story. And I have the original guy saying so, admitting this.
Well, and I think that the hardest part is a lot of people hear these claims and they take it as 100% truth. They never want to dig deeper and look for the answers themselves and find. And that's where the whole debunking community comes in. I mean, that's some of the most important parts of that is digging up the truth and putting it out there.
Right.
Because you got to remember, when something's said on a television show, you got millions of people see it. But then when somebody says it online, it always gets swamped down by so much other stuff. So getting the truth out there and just pushing it to try to let the world know, because I want, you know me, I've always been that kind of person. I want people to draw their own conclusions. I want people to have all the information and draw their own conclusions, but you can't if you don't have all the information.
Right. And that's the important thing. That's why I'm so anal about getting all the information I can. The articles that I write,
like that, man, you've always dived deep. I mean, deep. The minute you get a hold of something, you just keep on digging. And you know what? In all honesty, you've done that to me. You've done that to other. You and I have still been friends through all of that because it's always been in a positive manner because you're always looking for the truth. It's not like you're out trying to make somebody appear as a fraud or this, that, unless they're a fraud. But you're out there looking for the truth and you're diving deeper into things and really researching as much as possible.
There's a big difference between people that make mistakes and people that deliberately try to hoax. And there's sometimes it's a fine line. It's very hard to see which way someone's going. But in most cases, I think a lot of people are just making mistakes. And I don't know either. I mean, when I start out an investigation on a topic, when something catches my attention, it's like, all right, let me look into this. I might know a little bit about the subject. I might know the people involved and this and that. So I have something, but let me look at the claim. And that's what I always investigate. I don't investigate the house. I investigate the claim.
Well, and you're always looking to see, is the person saying these things because that's what they heard and they believe?
Right.
Or are they saying these things with a hidden agenda? Are they saying these things or embellishing things or changing things for financial gain, for attention, to become famous? All those factors come into play. And, so I get that people make mistakes. They get wrong information.
Right.
And sometimes they'll say that. They'll put that stuff out there without realizing that that's not correct. That's not the truth. But then there's those who purposely put things out there for reasons beyond that.
For reasons. Money. Spotlight.
That's usually what it comes down to. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, there's I'm going to borrow a quote from Reacher. And if you haven't watched the Reacher series,
I love that show.
Oh my God, it's so awesome. Yeah. But in an investigation, details matter. I mean, I love that quote because it really is. And you have to listen to people's descriptions of their eyewitness testimony and listen to the terminology that they're using, because sometimes we tend to exaggerate, and if for example, if somebody says, I walked into the room and, this cup just flew across the room. Like the way I said that, it makes it sound like a cup went boom, really fast with force across the entire room. And then when you start questioning, when you try to clarify exactly what happened, you realize it just kind of fell out. It tipped over and fell out of the cabinet. But if you go off that one description, that initial one, it's a completely different perspective than the second one.
And I've always told investigators that is like, we did a case, and you and I talked about this. A lady had contacted us saying that a ghost stabbed her in the shoulder. You'll remember this. And come to find out, the lady did. She had a knife in the shoulder. She had taken in the shoulder. But what happened was she came around the corner. She saw somebody standing there that she said, walked into a wall, and it scared her. She jumped back, rammed into the fridge that was behind her, where she kept her butcher block up top with the knives in it. It fell over. One came out and caught her in the shoulder.
Right.
But her perception was that a ghost stabbed her in the shoulder. But that wasn't the fact. I mean, it was a chain of circumstances that led up to a knife falling into her shoulder. It wasn't that she was stabbed. So she wasn't trying to mislead, but her perception of what happened was very different than what actually happened.
Right. And in a situation like that, I mean, you're scared. She was obviously scared. She didn't know what was going on. Everything's reaction, and it happens within seconds.
Mm-hmm.
It's not this drawn out thing, and we don't pay attention to every little detail.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing we have to kind of tease out and filter out the fill in the gaps kind of memory, because we do that. When we have memory gaps of an experience, we tend to fill in those gaps with what we think or believe should have happened. And that's why you have to keep asking questions. When people say that, oh, I saw a ghost, and it walked across the hallway. Okay, what was it wearing? And you see people start thinking like, oh shit, I wasn't expected to be asked that question.
Yeah.
Or when they say it was in period dress, what kind of dress? What does that mean? That's a common term to mean like old and sometimes Victorian, but like, what does that mean? Did you actually pay attention to the dress? Did you have enough time? Because if it goes by like that, you don't have time to pick out details.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's not bad. Like, I don't want to say that's bad. If you don't know every little detail or can answer every question I have, that's not bad. That's just saying, hey, there's missing information, and we need to acknowledge that instead of just, let's move on and just make an assumption. We can't make assumptions.
All right. So another object. All right. The devil's rocking chair. So supposedly, this is from Ed and Lorraine Warren's notorious "The Devil Made Me Do It" case. It also inspired, I believe, The Conjuring 3. But they claim that it's the actual demonic throne that the beast claimed as its own. I mean, I would have thought would have claimed something a little more comfortable.
Yeah. So apparently, like, Zak bought that off of Carl Glatzel, which is the older brother who had it. And I mean, I read through this book. I don't remember seeing that mentioned at all here. I don't see it mentioned in any of the other detail accounts of it. It's a chair. I think this was part of the story that came out later. That was added on for like shock. But it doesn't like, let me see. I'm trying to look for the quote from TMZ where it said the chair was in the room and that it would rock back and forth. It would levitate. Where is it? Give me a second here.
Why do all these things only happen when cameras aren't on them?
Because, that's the best way to get away with it. So yeah, TMZ said that it would rock back and forth on its own during the times when the kid would get into these like frenzies or spasms where he claimed to be possessed. It would rock back and forth. It would lift, levitate. And then Lorraine claimed that she saw the devil himself sitting in it at one point. And I mean, that's That's great, but again, I mean, just in typical fashion, there is no evidence to show this. Like, we don't have anything else except for one person's testimony. And so what? It's a chair. Carl had this chair for decades, and nothing happened. You know, he's had it in his house. It was in storage. Nothing comes of it. But once it gets into this not haunted museum, then we have weird things happening. And I believe the first night, this is actually interesting. I'm going off of memory when I was researching it. The first night it was in there, apparently somebody fainted in the museum. And it was like somewhere nearby where the chair was. And the chair is in a room by itself with a cubby hole. And it sits in the cubby hole. And there's a door that blocks it. So somebody passed out. And I actually talked to some of the tour guides on it. And the reason the person passed out was because it was so freaking hot inside that building that they collapsed. And the reason the tour guides afterwards were crying, because a lot of people were crying and there was, a little hysteria, which is understandable because dark, someone passed out, you're waiting for an ambulance, people freak out. But the reason why some of the tour guides were crying, because they were so stressed out. The chair was installed the day before, and Zak was pressuring everyone to memorize the script for this tour to have it, down pat by the next day. And the tour guides were just stressed out because they also, many of your viewers don't realize is that the tour guides have an earpiece, and somebody, we won't say who, Zak, watches everything. Like, not only does he have the camera set up in the museum, but he has it at his home. And this is coming from the tour guides. And he watches. And if somebody makes a mistake, he's yelling at them in their ear. So you can imagine trying to memorize this brand new script in addition to what you're already doing. Someone passed out. You have someone yelling in your ear, keep going. Gotta keep the tour going. Get people moving. You're going to freak out. I can understand why they reacted that way. And the last thing that happened was that they have a video clip, and this is from TMZ, which doesn't surprise me, of the door to the cubby hole opening mysteriously by itself. But here's the thing. Like, I started looking into it, the original video, and I'm like, Zak's holding something in his hand. He's got something in his hand, and there's a jump cut. So they actually edited out like a few frames of the video, because his hand suddenly goes from like here to here. There's no movement that you see. And I come to find out that the door is on a remote. He's holding a remote. I took the tour the second time, and as soon as we walked in the room, that's what the tour guide did. Open a box, took out a remote, clicked it, there's the door. Opens up by itself. I'm like, what the hell?
That stuff never gets out. It's always the crazy paranormal stuff that actually isn't.
It gets blamed. Yeah. I mean, and this is part of what I try to teach about critical thinking and good observational skills is pay attention to details. Details matter. Look at the scenes. What's out of place? Especially what don't you see? That's almost more important than what you do see. Like, what don't you see? What don't you see? Meaning, like, is there somebody that could be in the corner? Could there be somebody behind the door? Could, all these little details. You have to start thinking, like, what am I looking at? What am I not seeing? What could happen? It's one of and I'm going off the rail here, but when I recreate a lot of TikTok videos, I mean, so many of them, they take your phone, and like you're going down a hallway and there's a doorway. And instead of going into the doorway like this, so you can see it, they make sure that the camera goes all the way up to the door frame and then comes around, allowing someone to walk behind you. And my wife does that all the time. I can't tell you how many videos we have of me like walking and like I'm holding her hand, guiding her behind me just so she doesn't get in the camera. And it's so easy to do.
Well, I love watching your TikTok videos because you'll take people's videos and then you stitch them together and you recreate them and you show them how it's done. I think that's important. A lot of people need to understand that there's people out there who are purposely trying to trick individuals. And, it's not just because it's online doesn't mean it's real. Let's be
Right.
honest.
Yeah. Especially when the whole channel was dedicated to my haunted house.
And the most important thing is, what are you hoping that your work does for the field and people in general, man?
So my ultimate goal is to present critical thinking. I want people to learn critical thinking, the skills, because it's not something you're born with. It's something you develop. And I've done that over the years, and I'm still developing my skills in this. To pick out the details, to look for the not so obvious, to start using logic, to question your own beliefs, and to see that with a deep dive, with a good investigation, you can figure out a cause. You can figure out a logical conclusion based on the data, not on a belief, but on data. If you believe a place is haunted, that's cool if it's a personal belief. But if you're going to put it out there in the public, realize that there are people that are going to challenge it. We're going to question it. We're going to ask, where's the beef?
And it doesn't make you a horrible person to question it. I think that's the most important part, is looking for evidence to support somebody's claim doesn't make you or anybody in the debunking community bad. It's something that would help further the field if they're able to support those claims, and to get people like you and other debunkers in there. Okay, well, then it helps solidify that claim. It helps actually push the field forward. But I mean, just if somebody questions, evidence or whatever, and then it becomes a personal attack, well, that doesn't help anybody. I mean, that just pushes the field backwards, which we don't need.
So we all have to remember that the burden of proof is on the one making the claim. So if you or I come forward and say, this footage is X, then it's up to you or I to present evidence and data to support why we claim that. And if there's questions, if people challenge that, you should be able to defend your claim. And if you're not able to defend it, if you can't because you don't have the information available, if you really don't know how the equipment you used works, then you're going to fail. If you get annoyed, if you take it personally and take it as a personal offense that someone would dare question you, then the problem is with you, not with the person questioning you. You need to be prepared. Whenever I put out an article or a video or whatever, I'm open. Like, you can ask me questions. You can challenge me. That's fine, because once I put it out there, I've done everything that I could up to that point. I'm confident that I know how it was done, or at least one way it was done, because I want to make that clear. Sometimes I don't know exactly how, a hoax was pulled off, but I'm going to say, like, this is how I would do it based on like what I have around the house.
Saying that's how it was done, but that's just how,
Every magicians have taught me, because luckily in my circles, I'm friends with several magicians, and they always teach you have 2, 3, or 4 ways out of a trick, or to complete a trick. Because if someone screws up, that you have an assistant and they screw up, you have to be able to compensate for that.
Plan B, plan C.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm always looking like, how would I do this? How would I, look around? And I try always to use the same equipment that people use in their videos, because I want to say, like, look, I had the same exact camera or same exact EMF meter, whatever, and I'm using it, and this is what I found. So that's, I guess that's overall, I'm just trying to improve the quality of everyone's work. I want all of us to do better. Like, I don't have beliefs in the paranormal, but I would love to see a ghost. I would love to see Bigfoot. I would love to see an alien. I would especially love to drive a UFO. I would absolutely love to do that. I mean, that's oh yeah.
That's most of our hopes.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great.
No, it comes down to, you've answered my questions. I know you had some questions for me, so we're running low on time. So let's do it, because as I said, you and I hang out, and I've never asked you, to take it easy on me. I've never asked you to, tell me what questions you want to ask or anything like that. And as well as you have, so you've been the same way. So let's do it up, Kenny.
I only have a few, because I mean, you've been on my show. Yeah, we've gone over that. I mean, I've seen it.
Oh,
anyway,
man. Still a friendship.
yeah. I mean, yeah, you've been on my show like twice, 2 or 3 times, I think, and yeah, I mean, I've asked you a lot of questions already, so there's
Geez,
not
you came
too
and
much.
stayed with me for a week.
Yeah, and we did a show from your house.
That's
so, I guess the first question is: have your beliefs changed any over the years since you started your show? Like when you started filming Ghost Hunters, I'm sure you had certain beliefs when you started. And then over the course of years of going to different places and seeing, like, literally doing all the behind the scenes work and seeing how people react, and owners and people that contact you, have your beliefs changed? And if they have, which ones and how so?
I think I've become more prone to really look for the answers, but also look for any hidden agenda. So sometimes you'll get called out to locations and you get there and you find out, all right, well, this person's calling me in to investigate, but a week later, now they're posting something online trying to sell tickets for an overnight investigation or whatever. So you always need to go in with an open mind and take what they say with a grain of salt and be prepared that there might be some hidden agenda coming from that individual. So I believe in the paranormal. I just believe over 80% of all claims can be disproved, probably even more than that. When it comes down to demonic type haunts or possessions, I believe 99.9% of those can be disproved. They have nothing to do with the paranormal. So whether it's over medicated, under medicated, over religious, self-medicated, there's all different issues that come into that. And that could be a show on its own. But so I believe in the paranormal, but I believe that there's a whole lot of people trying to pull things for their own agendas on that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's where my belief, because, initially you think there's good in everybody, but honestly, as you get going and you're really now you're coming in, which, if this place is haunted and this business is haunted, then it's probably going to boost sales for them. You realize that not everybody's honest. Not everybody's good.
So I guess a follow-up deeper question would be then, I guess when you started out, did you believe that more places could be haunted, that there were a lot more ghosts around? And like you mentioned about demons, and demon claims could most likely be explained, like 99 point whatever percent are easily explained. Before you started doing the show, did you believe that was a lot less, that number?
That's a good question. No, I've always, when it comes down to demonic hauntings and possessions, I've always believed that 99.9% of those have nothing to do with the paranormal. So that belief has never changed. When it comes down to the hauntings, I think, well, I don't know, because what people see on the show isn't, we might film 30 episodes and they might only air 15. So, and it's up to the network. They can air whatever they want to air. So they're going to air the ones that they, if they want to air just the ones that we caught more activity than the other place, then that's up to them. Right. So I still believe over 80% of all claims can be disproved. I just definitely play a little more cautious when it comes to investigating somebody's home, especially on the show, or even in person now, being so-called one of the most famous ghost hunters out there, me coming to your house and investigating. Yeah. And I hate that. It's never been.
I'm Jason Hawes.
And as long as you've known me, I've never changed. I've always been the same person.
You've always been cool with me. Yeah.
It's because it's not about TV, man. TV comes and goes. It's like, I don't care about that. But I do realize that people will try to use the attention on me to financially benefit themselves. So I have to go in more with an open mind of, is this person legit, truly having something going on, or are they looking for some sort of Jason Hawes was here to investigate? Let me post that.
Okay.
So so I've seen that there's a lot more biased people in the world, I guess.
Okay. And I guess the next question I have is pretty much goes on the back end of this. Have you found that some homes and businesses have tried to not only use your show or just use your name as you started already covering, but staged events in order to try to convince you it was haunted, like staged and hoaxed that you've caught. And if you've caught them, I know at least 2 cases. I believe 2 cases I know of, but are there more? Like, how many didn't make it to air?
When it comes to the show, I think a couple that we aired, that we caught them, definitely deterred a lot of people from trying to do that television wise. But we have had people build speakers in their walls. We have and try to hook it to a little microphone system down in a hidden room in the basement to try to create ghostly sounds at certain hours. We've definitely had problems with that. People who put digital recorders, or now this day and age, they'll put a cell phone and make their own alarm system and hide it somewhere in their house. So it goes off and it plays these words or whatever at this certain time. Yeah. So and especially with technology these days, that as well as I do, somebody could have a remote and turn on a recorder in a back room. So you always need to really, really investigate and look for the real answers. So yes, we've definitely had people try to pull some over on us. We've been lucky enough that we have caught the majority of those people. But then again, it comes down to a situation where I would put every single one out. Every time you catch somebody faking stuff, put it out there. But sometimes production companies and networks don't want to do that because they don't want to start dealing with possible legal ramifications.
Right.
So instead, they just decide not to air the show. So, and that's their choice when it comes down to that. But I still think if you're faking, get called out. I mean, put it out there. Let the world, and you and I have always talked about that. It's like, hey, if you were dumb enough to do this, well, then you're going to have to deal with the ramifications of your actions.
I think it's a bummer to hear, like, and I understand the production company, or the network not wanting to do that because you're actively pointing the finger at someone and saying, haha, you cheated, we're calling you out.
Because a lot of people get really angry when they see it. Next thing you know, they start calling, they're harassing, they're saying things, and these people could claim now they're feeling threatened. Now
I know about that. Yeah. I know really well how that part goes, because I do that. I have several of those letters framed and hanging on my wall.
But I mean, and some of these businesses can be like, well, my phone line's so packed now with people calling and being negative that I don't have any business. And it's like, well, okay. But I'm under the belief that, well, then you shouldn't have done it in the first place.
Right. You should not have screwed up. You shouldn't have tried to fake it. Any plans for a new show or any projects coming up?
Right now we're in talks. I've been in no rush. The main thing is, let's just say I've enjoyed looking into changes. So, I think that's what it comes down to is, if a network wants to go one way and it's not the way I want, I'll just go somewhere else.
Okay. That's okay. That's fair. And I guess, well, that gives me a shorter follow-up question. Would a certain skeptic ever be invited to take part?
Dude, I've invited you on investigations, and you know what? We will make that happen.
Okay, good.
Let's do it.
Good. I would love to do that. That would be so much fun. All right. That's it. That's all I got.
Give the wife my love.
I will.
We'll talk soon, and everybody out there, make sure you subscribe. Check out Kenny's videos his articles to all these different claims of haunted objects, and we'll go from there. We'll talk again soon, my friend.
All right, buddy.
All right.